If you've ever been curious about Croatia, today is the episode for you. We're going to be learning all about Croatia from people who are living there and who love it.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time.
Hey, Christinah and Jordan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Of course.
And you guys tell us where you are right now.
So right now we're in Rijeka. It's a port town in northwestern Croatia. We're about 2.5 hours from Venice, and a couple hours from Zagreb, the capital of Croatia.
Okay, fantastic. And also, it's not just the two of you.
No, we have our 3 little ones with us. So this is their first international trip. We have a 6-year-old, almost 7, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old who are trekking with us.
Amazing. So, adventurous souls traveling with children anywhere, right? Let alone, 5,000 miles away from what you have called home. So, yeah, we'd love to hear how Croatia got on your radar and just take it from there.
Yes, you should start that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I served as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Croatia. From the time I was 19 to 21, I spent 2 years here. And 4 months of those 2 years I spent in Serbia. Just got to kind of travel all around. So I'm about 33 now. So I came home about 12 years ago. And we've been back a couple times since, although it's been 8 years since we've been back in the area. But obviously developed, some close relationships with the people here. Unfortunately, I spent almost all of my mission inland, so I didn't get to see as much of the beautiful coastline and the various national parks that Croatia has while I was a missionary, or maybe got to go on a quick day trip there. But so a year after I ended my mission, I came back and saw a bunch of the sites. Came back a few years later, right after Christinah and I had gotten married, and got to show her the area. But it was, we were here for a week or 2, something like that. We were exhausted. We had no money. So we're back to try it again with a little more freedom.
Right.
Of course, constrained by 3 children.
By having kids. So different kind of experience this time. But yeah, still pretty great.
No, that sounds great. And so you said 12 years ago is when you were there as a missionary. And then you came back by yourself a year later, and now you're there as a couple on a budget, on a shoestring budget, and now back and you've been there a month. And how long is that, right? And how long you describe the puzzle edges of this trip?
It kind of came together. We were kind of looking for a change of scenery, and the lease on our apartment back in Salt Lake was coming up in May. And we realized, hey, that would be pretty great timing. We could let that lease go, put all our stuff in storage, and just kind of take off somewhere. And Croatia seemed like a natural option, just because we'd been there. We knew it well enough to feel comfortable taking the kids with us. Jordan knows the language. I'm learning a little bit. And of course, we just, knew we'd love it. So we put all our stuff in storage. We don't currently have a permanent address. And then we came first to Podstrana, which is right next to Split. We spent all of June there, and then we moved up here to Rijeka this month, and are doing a little more of the, obviously, sightseeing in this area too, but also getting to branch out on the weekends to cities further inland where we have friends that we know from Jordan's mission and things like that.
Amazing. So it's going to be 2 months overall.
Yeah.
And then back here to Utah.
We'll get to take a week and a half at the beginning of August 1st, where Jordan actually gets to take time off, because that's kind of been an interesting factor in this trip too. He's been working the whole time on a Salt Lake timetable. So he starts working at about 5 p.m. and goes until theoretically 1 or 2 a.m., but he's a corporate lawyer, so you never really know where that lands. There have been plenty of times that we've woken up and he's still going, and then sleeps often during the day. Thank goodness Croatia, pretty much everywhere has blackout shutters, so that helps. But he'll get to take some time off, and we're going to go on a little road trip through some other places in Europe before we head back and try to figure our lives out.
Awesome. So working remotely is making the job part, you have continuity of work, and because our listeners are always curious, how do you pay for experiences like this? And, as fun as it is to just say, I'm just going to take the whole summer and go, saying, okay, yeah, there's a way you can work, and sometimes you have to deal with time differences. So it's 8 hours ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
This time
8
of year.
hours ahead. So
it's pretty rigorous, pretty rigorous job schedule for you,
well,
Jordan.
and it's happened to not to complain at all. It's happened to coincide with my worst month on the job in the 3 years I've been there. So it's been an experience trying to navigate that. But no, yeah, it's been a blessing as well. So I'm based out of the Salt Lake office for the firm that I work for, but I primarily work with teams in San Francisco and then a handful of teams in Chicago and New York. I actually don't really do any work with any of the people in the Salt Lake office. And so it's really no difference to them whether I'm in Salt Lake or Croatia, as long as I'm able to maintain a schedule that's, reasonable and able to turn things on the schedule that we need to be turning documents. So, like she said, yeah, I've been working through the night basically, often working till like 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So, 3 a.m. Salt Lake time. But I've recently offloaded some of my work, so hopefully the next 2 or 3 weeks will be a little more manageable.
Enjoy more things.
Yeah. But on top of that, going to what you said about cost, Christinah mentioned that our lease lapsed, so that's helped, I think, lower the cost of the trip to a much more manageable amount than I think most people would expect for something like this. So.
Our monthly rates on Airbnb, we were paying about the same, and in some cases less than we were paying for rent before. So it was mostly just the flights and the incidentals when we got here.
Gelato.
Yeah, lots of gelato.
Did you say gelato?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask because I was, you're so close to Italy. The gelato crosses over the Adriatic Sea and
it travels quite
strong.
well. Yeah.
Well, especially in this area. If you move more inland or down south, then
Right.
it's there's less of an Italian influence. But
On
in
coast.
the Rijeka area, and we went up and visited Pula just a couple of days ago, and gelato everywhere, all sorts of Mediterranean food. The signs in Pula are half of them are in Italian, so heavy Italian influence.
That works out well because our kids our oldest especially is a little bit picky, but he could live on cheese pizza, and there's pizza almost anywhere we go. So we can always pizza and spaghetti. So we can always feed him as we branch out and try new things. We can always keep the kids fed too. So
no one's gonna starve. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I had no idea that they would have the signs in both languages. So is Croatian the language that you speak in Croatia? Like, we're old enough to have seen the boundary lines change and the names of the countries change. So I'm like, I don't even know. What is the language?
Yeah, so it depends on who you ask. Croatians will say that it's Croatian. Technically, linguistically, it's Serbo-Croatian, kind of encompasses the group of languages in that family. But for various political reasons, it's often subdivided into Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian, Montenegrin. And there's a lot of similarity, as you may already know, between Serbo-Croatian and Russian, Ukrainian, Bulgarian, a lot of overlap there. But those are actually different languages. Croatian versus Serbian, for example, I mean, it's probably more similar than British and American English. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, that is a really good tip. So far we know language, we got blackout curtains, we got gelato and pizza.
We're checking all the boxes, stuff that we were really curious about. I guess just a quick background. my connection is that when I was a kid, my dad was stationed at the Air Force in Germany, and we would do road trips around Europe for our vacations. And we made it through Italy, and we got to Yugoslavia because
Was
this was the, I guess, early to mid '80s, and so Yugos Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and was Montenegro part of Yugoslavia?
I don't
Don't
think
think
it
it was.
was. I'd have to double check
linguistically,
that
it's
though.
another one that's
Yeah.
basically the same, or at least mutually intelligible. But
Yeah,
I don't
I'll
think
have to double
politically.
check that.
Okay, but it used to be the Yugoslavia was sort of the conglomerate of those other those three countries who weren't really happy to be put together. I guess it was the Soviet Union that put them together. I don't know. Maybe you can just, we don't want to do a whole history
You may or
lesson,
may not know. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm curious if you can give us sort of a quick overview of how those countries came together and how they came
Yeah,
apart.
so I should know more about how they came together. They were, I think, kind of just, they came together throughout history as kind of a response to constant invasion and pressures from outside. They were not part of the Soviet bloc. They were communist, and Tito and Stalin were, they kind of worked together on some things, but they were not what you would necessarily describe as friends. Um, there are some funny stories. I don't know if they're true. I've heard that Stalin sent 2 assassins to kill Tito, and both of them failed. And after the second one, Tito sent a message back to Stalin saying, "If you try again, I'll return the favor and mine won't miss." So,
Big threat from a
yes.
little country.
Exactly.
So yeah, under Tito, I mean, Tito is everybody loves Tito still here. He's, they've got, he was kind of the figurehead of communist Yugoslavia. And by all accounts, which I'm sure are not rose colored at all, things were much better during the communist rule here than they are today. So he kind of helped establish Yugoslavia as a player in the region. He helped build the infrastructure, particularly in Serbia. I was actually just speaking with somebody the other day who was talking about how, prior to the communist regime, prior to Tito coming to power, Serbia was kind of just, it was more agrarian, lots of villages. I don't know if you could call it villages, but
You basically said
spread
there
out.
were like 2 main roads really there, and those were ones that had stuck around since the Roman Empire,
Mhm.
and not much had happened
Right.
in between.
If you go through Serbia,
Okay.
right, it's well built out, some good infrastructure. It's it's easy to travel through. So a lot of that rise in Serbian influence, Serbian infrastructure, their economy happened during that communist era. Um, and hopefully, I'm not saying anything that somebody proves to be false later. I'm trying to remember based off of my what I heard
Conversations.
14 years
Yeah.
ago. And I studied a little bit about this in college, but it's been a while since then too. So he consolidated power. He put most of the military power in Serbia. Most of the financial power was centered in Slovenia. And then in 1991, right, things start to fall apart. This is after Tito's passed away. Things start to fall apart. Slovenia and Croatia declare independence. Slovenia leaving is a massive blow to Serbia because the banks and the stashes of money are all in Slovenia. But the tanks and all of the munitions are in Serbia, right? So they've got the military force and they start to try to assert their will, particularly in Bosnia. Bosnia is kind of wedged between Serbia and Croatia, so it took a lot of the brunt of the fighting. And then if you go visit eastern Croatian towns, you'll see a lot of the scars of the war as well, particularly up in the Osijek, Vukovar area. But yeah, so they fight for 4 years. Bosnia obviously suffered quite a bit. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the genocide that occurred there and various atrocities. And ultimately, ended up kind of, I guess Croatia technically won the war. Serbia was forced to recognize their independence as a country, Bosnia's independence as a country, and pay some reparations. And the UN came in, particularly in Bosnia. So we've got a split now between the Republika Srpska and Bosnia. Anyway, that's something interesting that I'm not particularly expert on, but I could talk about if you guys are interested in it. But that's kind of the falling apart of the Yugoslav.
I think it's just to your point, Emily, that we're 51, and to have lived long enough to sort of see nations change international borders, and just seeing how history can shift a region over time, and it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Lessons in human nature.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably enough overview. We can get deeper and another.
We'll start another podcast for history and politics.
Sorry if I'm going too deep into.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. And it's something that we really love. A lot of our listeners don't know this, but prior to our family moving aboard a sailboat, Erik worked in the Broadway industry for 10 years. And before he started a job there, even as a student, he was writing musicals and producing musicals in college. And the one that we have all these awards over his shoulder for is one called Berlin. And he goes deep on the history, and he wrote a whole play and musical about the start of the Cold War, right? So like we are into it. Sure.
Well, I mean, I think it's, I get into it sometimes just because I think it's hard to spend time in a country that's not far removed from a civil war like that and not just see the
effects.
Enormous impact of that on the people here. And it's starting to fade. If you talk to people who are in their mid-20s or younger, right, they don't remember the war. They were affected by it, of course, but
they weren't in it. Yeah,
I think there's more tolerance, more forgiveness for mostly for better. I think there's kind of a sad element of forgetting history, but
definitely it affects affects cultural attitudes, of course, and like you said, depending on which areas you're in, you can see it more directly than others. The kids and I, because Jordan's been working, we've been able to kind of do more branching out and taking little day trips and things like that. One night we got to, when we were down in Split, you're only about an hour and a half from Mostar, which is a famous town in Bosnia. So we got to cross over into there, and it was remarkable just to see the difference in infrastructure. Actually, talking about roads earlier. Once we crossed the border, suddenly freeways that felt just like normal freeways to us turned into dirt roads, even though we're going to major destinations. And obviously that wasn't the case all over, right? But just there are spots where you can be reminded, oh, this is still within most people who live here. This is still within their lifetime, right? And there's still a lot of economic and other recovery to be done. And it's insightful, it's meaningful to kind of witness that.
Well, I'm really curious because Croatia, in a lot of ways, is on the rise. We're going there. I'm going there. We're going there in 2 weeks for the first time since I was a kid. And as we've kind of put it out there to people that might want to sail with us, people are like, oh yeah, I keep hearing about Croatia, or just that. It sounds like Croatia is a real hot spot. More and more people are hearing about it, talking about it, and so yeah, I'm just curious. You obviously went back for very personal reasons, but there's also a lot of appeal to it generally. I'm curious, what are some of the things about it that are drawing people there that are, makes you want to kind of travel across the planet to visit this country? What are some things that you've personally been curious about, and then things that might be generally interesting to any kind of world traveler, tourist? Yeah.
I think a big draw is the coast, the beaches. They're incredible. I was struck by them when we came back. I'm originally from Florida, grew up there. And so I feel pretty spoiled in terms of beaches. Once I finally made it to California, I kind of was like, Florida beaches are better, I was just pretty spoiled when it comes to beaches. And when I saw these beaches, I was like, I'm ruined. I can't go back there. Most of them are pebble beaches, which took me a minute to get used to, but especially with kids, I've really appreciated that we don't drag sand everywhere. It's a pretty clean, beach trip when we go. Um, and they're just so clear, right? It's beautiful, like turquoise, deep blue, clear water, all along the coast, really. Like you have hot spots like Split. We're pretty close to Opatia. That's a famous spot to go for swimming. But it's not really just those. Like you could go through Google Maps and like go pretty much anywhere on the coast and start clicking along, little beach spots and see pictures of them, and they're all just stunning, really. So that's a huge thing. We've got this huge, 6-hour long stretch of just gorgeous coast that makes up a lot of Croatia. And then of course, excursions you can go on from there. There are tons of islands along that coast that have all of their own beautiful beaches and other unique spots within them too, and boat tours, and if you're into kayaking, sailing, right, snorkeling, all kinds of things you could explore from there. And there are no sharks, which is incredible. So
You said no
yeah,
sharks?
apparently the last person to die here from a shark attack was like in the 70s. They're just not. The water is warm and clear and gorgeous. You'll see fish. There aren't much in the way of waves. So if you're a surfer, it might not be the spot for you. But for swimming, it's great. It's calm. For bringing kids, it's great. But yeah, for whatever reason, sharks just don't tend to make it up this way. And so, as far as beaches go, that's a big win for me.
That's a huge win. Yeah.
Especially
Right,
coming from Florida.
exactly.
Even in California,
Right, yeah.
we were out there surfing once with it, and someone's like, "Oh, there's a great white out here." Like, we'll just
No, definitely.
Okay, I want to keep talking about this. One of my clearest memories of being in Croatia, I keep wanting to say Yugoslavia, as a kid, was pebble beaches. We got there and like, why is everybody wearing these little rubber shoes? And you would, along the beach, they would have vendors that would sell, or shops that would sell little rubber slippers that you would put on your feet. And then we went out into the water and we're like, your feet hurt when you walk on the rocks because I don't know, they were too big, too small. But anyway, once you put these little rubber slippers on, all of a sudden the beaches were like 5 times more enjoyable. So is that still a thing?
Definitely. It took me a while. It took me a few weeks to finally, get out and invest in a pair of water shoes, but it made a big difference. Especially some beaches are more like smooth pebble, some are more gravel. The gravel ones, they start off fine, but they start to they're just sharper. So they start to bother your feet a little more after a while. So the water shoes just make a big difference there. But yeah, definitely is helpful to have a good pair of water shoes.
So we may want to buy a set before we get there and just have our own with us.
They do have sand beaches here, but it's imported. So as far as I know, there are no natural sand beaches in Croatia.
Really, they import the sand?
Yeah.
From Italy, I guess?
I actually don't know where it comes from.
Probably.
Sorry, not that it matters. Now I'm like doing like social planning here.
Like a lot of beaches add sand
Right.
to their beaches
That is true.
to keep the tourists happy.
But honestly, I think the pebble ones, they probably contribute to the clearness of the water, right? There are a few famous spots like Zlatni Rat off it's on the island of Brač, close to Split. That's kind of one of the most iconic beaches in the Adriatic. We went there, and you could go way out. I went out at one point, swam out deep enough that I couldn't touch the ground. And was looking down and was seeing fish, and I thought, oh, those are so pretty, but I was surprised. I couldn't figure out why they weren't. Typically if you're swimming and there are fish around you, they'll kind of move away from you, right? They see some turbulence in the water, they see something moving, and they move away. I'm like, why aren't they moving away? But I'm also not feeling them, and I realized they were under me. It was just that the water was so clear, I couldn't tell. They looked like they were up much closer than they were, but just really, really clear, beautiful water. And I think the pebbles kind of contribute to that.
Oh, amazing.
What's the name of that beach again? I want to write it down.
Zlatni Rat. It means golden horn, right? Yeah.
On the island of Brač.
Brač, city of gold.
Okay. Latina?
Zlatni, so Zlatni, Zlatni, and Rat, just like rat, R-A-T.
Zlatnigrad. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Sweet. Emily, you had something you were
Oh
going to
yeah,
ask?
I want to hear about some of the national parks because the waterfalls are very appealing to me, like the inland lakes and waterfalls. So yeah, what have I know you were saying, Jordan, that when you were serving your mission, you were in an area where you didn't get to see a lot of maybe the stunning geography that Croatia has to offer, and you went back later, and then we're like, okay, now I get to see this country everyone's been talking about. So what are some of those places that are just really special, geographically
Well, I think
beautiful?
if you ask people here, the top two that they would probably point to are Plitvica and Krka. And I can't speak to
Mhm.
Krka because I've actually never been there. Christina
We got
got
to
to
go.
go a couple of weeks ago, so maybe she can talk about that. But Plitvica, I think, is hailed as far and away the best of the more inland attractions, and it's you're somewhere kind of sort of between Rijeka and Zagreb, a couple of hours away from here. You're kind of just driving through the middle of nowhere, and then there's this oasis, and it's a series of, I want to say, 6, 7 lakes connected by waterfalls. Just gorgeous. The same thing, Christina was talking about the clarity of the water in the sea. Same thing for these lakes. It's so clear. I had a picture. I've got to try to find it somewhere. I had a picture that used to come up on my screensaver of the fish swimming, and it looked like they were flying. You can't tell in the photo that there's any water, right? It's just kind of floating there. So, and you just hike around. They've got these like kind of wooden pathways that you use to navigate around. It's quite a trip. You're going to spend like 4, 5, 6 hours walking around if you try to see the whole thing, but there are shorter paths that you can follow. Just gorgeous, these very pretty waterfalls in this very green area in the middle of nothing. Um, and it can I've not been privileged to see this, but every few winters it will freeze in such a way that the waterfalls freeze on the sides of the cliffs, and you should look at the pictures sometime. They are stunning. So
Oh, that sounds great. That's definitely one of the places that was recommended to us, for inland travel, and one I'm excited to see
It
for
doesn't.
myself next
Yeah,
Yeah.
month.
it's not coming up quick.
Yeah, Christina. Kirka, is that how you say the other place you're talking about, Jordan? Yeah. So Christina, yeah. How was that?
In some ways similar. It's mostly a waterfall attraction though. So there's a main kind of a main waterfall that's just really really beautiful, really wide, and you've got kind of a series of them. So they're kind of cascading down. Just really beautiful. It's one of those places that you can come. You can kind of see the main one, take some pictures, walk around, and like that's it. And it's great. You won't feel sad about it. But you could also turn it into a whole day or a few days and hike around more and find some of the higher waterfalls and things like that. Ours was a pretty quick trip. We had the kids and everything in tow, so we came, saw the waterfalls, got more ice cream, right, and went. But it's one of those places you definitely could branch out and do a lot of hiking and exploring around there if you wanted to.
And is there
Um,
swimming or
in
no?
in Kritika, I think there was, and just a few years ago, most of it stopped. There's one designated spot where you can swim, but it's not like right under the waterfall or anything. You can kind of come out a little bit and see one of the waterfalls. Um, but yeah, there is a swimming spot. But you get kind of spoiled in Croatia, where like in terms of compared to the beach, it's not anything too crazy special. It's nice to have a spot to swim, right, if it's hot. Um, but yeah, not like right by the waterfall or anything like that. In Kravica, there's a waterfall park in Bosnia um, that we went to on our way to Mostar when we did that trip. Um, and we didn't swim that time because we were kind of doing just a quick, again, on the way stop. But there's a beautiful waterfall there, Kravica, and you can swim in that one pretty much right under where the waterfall is. And that's really cool to watch.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know why waterfalls always just feel so special. I like Even if it's just like one little drip. I'm like, well, it's a
I think
waterfall.
in a lot of ways similar to the ocean too. There's something about the sound, I think, that's just incredibly soothing. You know,
Mhm.
just it's a beautiful place to reflect, to um, just kind of feel some peace and enjoy the beauty. So,
Yeah, it's true. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like the movement of the water over Earth does. I don't know if it's like shaking up the ions and making positive, like literally positive energy, but anywhere we go that's like that, like I'm thinking coast of Portugal or even Big Sur in California, like everywhere that the water and the earth are just kind of like coming together, like rushing past each other. Um, I just love that. And maybe that's part of why I love waterfalls so much because it's the same kind of like a wave crashing in, but it's like the
yeah.
constant motion of it, right? Also, there are things besides the geography, and we talked about some of the more recent history, but my understanding is that there are also like some medieval cities and like some really really old stories from before Yugoslavia, that are still kind of told in the architecture there. Are those any of the places that you
For
visited, or yeah, what
For
else do you
sure.
recommend?
Well, we started in Split. One of the main attractions and kind of the heart of the town in Split is Diocletian's Palace, so ancient Roman summer home for the emperor there. So people love to go, take tours of that, and you can see it's pretty well preserved. And that's a really amazing place to see. And we also, as Jordan mentioned briefly, just this last weekend we went down to Pula. It's about an hour and a half from here. That's where a lot of the signs were in both Croatian and Italian because Pula's kind of changed hands a few times. But it's basically got its own version of what you call the Colosseum. It was actually completed a few years before the actual Colosseum in Rome, but same very similar structure. We're both classics majors, so we're kind of nerds in that period of history. And that was a really cool thing to go see how well preserved that was, and to get a tour of that and some of the other historical areas there, and see how much of history you can see in some of these places.
The arena there is the best preserved in terms of the outside structure, right? So the Venetians came. We were just learning this from our tour guide. The Venetians came and stripped out a lot of the limestone that was used for the seating, but the actual, I guess, elliptical walls surrounding the arena are, well, I think, 90% original. Um, yeah,
Wow.
very, very neat place. There's also a temple to Caesar Augustus there. There are a couple of walls from the old Roman walls, right? The wall for Hercules, right? I think there's a Herculean wall and a couple of other cool things that you can see in the city from ancient Rome. So 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years ago. I guess in some cases a little over. Um, but yeah, so I think that's about as old as you get in Croatia in terms of what's still, you know, existing. Um, but you have everything from that time period up through. You've got Hungarian forts, you've got castles, you have in Dubrovnik, right, which some of your viewers might know from King's Landing. I think it is. I've not seen Game of Thrones, but I think King's Landing is filmed in Dubrovnik. Um,
Yeah, I read that it was. I haven't watched that show either,
so
but
another fortress, right?
same.
That wasn't assaulted. I think it was built in the early 1800s originally, and was well enough fortified that nobody tried to attack it until the civil war here in Yugoslavia. It was the first time that anyone attempted.
Wow.
So
Peace through
Yeah,
strength.
exactly.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
touch that.
Well, well, okay. I'm changing subjects a little bit here, but I'm curious because you said your kids are 1, 4, and 6 going on 7, right? So a lot of parents would say, "Oh, our kids are going to be too young to appreciate it. We should wait till they're older." And I'm a kid who road tripped around Europe when I was probably 6,
6.
7, 8 years old. Made a huge impression on me, uh, and I'm just curious your take on you probably have a variety of reasons of going there. and going with your kids, but I'm just curious what might be some things that the ways that it's impacting you as a family or your kids, or ways that you kind of hope it will, but may not play out for a while. So I'm just kind of from a parenting angle, I'm curious your take
Right.
on that.
I think, there are definitely things that we see, when we went on a tour of the arena in Pula. For the most part, the kids were kind of doing their own thing and just hanging around nearby and looking for things to play with. They, weren't necessarily tuned in and, pulling all this history in. So of course there are things that, I think in 10 years they'll appreciate a lot more, or hope, that they'll will have chances to come back and they'll be able to appreciate more. But at the same time, um, I think you'd be surprised how much they can. You probably wouldn't, having, like you said, having experienced that impact yourself. But a lot of people might be surprised at how much it can impact a kid just to be in a place that's different, right? To be constantly hearing people speak in another language and realize, like, oh, the words that I use every day are normal for me, and that's not what's normal for other kids, right? We've been walking around and we'll stop at playgrounds because that's what we do, right? We'll stop at playgrounds and play, and often make a friend, and there'll be this moment of um, watching them kind of try to navigate the linguistic difference and watch them like figure out how to play with each other, and how to navigate when they think they're being offended by each other too, because one person's trying to say something and someone else is trying to respond and it's not quite working, right? And just watching them work through that and helping them understand, well, yes, like this is how you would say this is how they would say this, right? I think is an impactful thing. Same thing with things like going grocery shopping and realizing, hey, the go-to brands that we often get for cereal and whatnot are not necessarily here, but here are some things here that are different that we can really enjoy. The oldest that we mentioned earlier was a picky eater, has eaten a lot of pizza and spaghetti, but has also recently learned that he likes cevapi, which we were like, this is a huge win. Anytime we add a new food to his list, it's a huge win. And cevapi, of all things, are these sausages. They're delicious. And so it's fun to watch them, again, just experience things that are different, and find things that they miss from home, but also things that they like in a new place. And of course it helps when you have you know lots of beautiful beaches you can go play with the rocks in and go swimming, and obviously just your normal um, experiences of going to the park and going to the city library and checking out books, which we were able to do down in Split, and bring home some in English and some in Croatian, and have some books at home. Um, so yeah, I think they can get a lot out of it.
Yeah. And I will say, I think, not to discourage this at all, because I think there are good elements of traveling with kids on a short term basis too. But I think you do get a lot of benefits that maybe you might not get on like a week long trip through Europe when you get to settle into a place, right? We're going to church every week. They're meeting, they got to go to primary with some other Croatian kids, primary, for anyone who's not, right? It's just kind of the little kids' Sunday school. Um, and going to the library, right? Going to it's they get to go grocery shopping. They get to see how that experience goes, right? I mean, because grocery shopping here is not. It feels like a totally different experience compared to what you get in the U.S. Um, getting to see the housing and how people live and their schedules. And anyway, I think when you get to kind of settle in and almost kind of live like the people who actually live here, it teaches things. I think on top of that, though, it also gives us experiences as parents that we learn from, and we can apply the lessons that we learn in our parenting, right? And so, um, and just kind of sets an expectation of travel and openness. And anyway, those are my thoughts. I know, when we told people that we were going to come out here, a lot of people were like, "Oh, with kids, really?" It was kind of funny to me, the number of people. We'd say, "Oh, we're going to go to Croatia for 10 weeks," and they'd say, "Oh, are you taking the kids with you?" I was always like,
It's 10 weeks.
"I'm not moving
What? Would you leave your kids for 10 weeks?
So, I always got a good laugh out of that. But I think a lot of people were like, this is the kind of thing you save for when they're older, or when they're moved out, like you go and live in Croatia for 3 months when you're empty nesters, kind of a thing. And I think, there were a lot of things that kind of played into our decision to do this, but a lot of it's just like, I don't want my kids to miss out on just kind of that, right, natural, like taking things in, that experience that they have is they're sponges, they're learning things, right? They're picking up language, they're picking up cultural differences. And on top of that, I don't want to wait, I don't want to miss out on 20 years of traveling while I wait for them to grow up. So and there are a lot of things, like I said, that I think we are going to learn that will hopefully make us better people, better parents along the way.
I really love what you're saying, and I think that you're making a really keen observation about the difference between what Emily and I call slow travel versus fast travel. Fast travel, when you say, hey, we've got a week, it's spring break, bam, we're going to go somewhere, we're going to have a pretty packed day every day, you're going to do stuff, it's go, go, go. The kids are exhausted, mom and dad get tired. You can do it that way, or you can say, I'm going to just go park at an all-inclusive resort and just chill. But one of the things that, and I'm not trying to disparage those, I just think that in our experience, we've found that when we move fast, it actually takes more energy than we get from the experience. And when we move slow, like what you're talking about, you get to go grocery shopping, you make friends, or acquaintances in the community, you get to go to the library, and every day doesn't have to be out doing, because you don't feel like, oh, if we only have 5 days, so we got to go. You can say, well, today we're going to go out, and the next day we're going to stay home, and you can pace yourself on a more sustainable level. And I was just at my parents for a couple weeks, kind of helping them out. And one of the things that I did was I just pulled out old photo albums from when I was a kid. We lived in Germany, we were traveling, and I realized how much I remember because of the photographs, not because I have memories of actually being there. And so your kids may not remember this for a long time, but I think if they get a chance to go back and look at the photographs of you being there now, but if they look at it 5, 6, 10 years down the road, it's going to be a part of like, oh, this is part of who I am. This is how I was raised. This is the kind of thing that our family does. I think that has a big impact.
And I think to that point, Erik was recently in Florence, and he had been there as a kid and he didn't remember it. But then once he got there and he was like, wait, it's very humid. Everyone's sitting on curbs. Like, it kind of came back to him like, I know I was very little, but this I do remember, right? Like, I remember how it felt just like moving through it. And it was kind of cool to have, we say we're at our halfway mark because we're 50 now, right? Well, 51.
We're going for 100.
We're going for 100, to be at our halfway mark, and then to be able to think back to when you were so young and be like, oh, that's visceral for me, right? I remember that. That's really cool. And I also want to highlight what you said about going to church. Even when we are fast traveling, we really love to go to church. I hear a lot of people use the word tourist in a negative way, and nobody wants to be seen as a tourist, and everyone kind of wants to blend in and be like, I'm like a local and those other people are the tourists, And I just have felt like, yeah, if you want to have really local experiences, you're going to go to church. You're going to meet the actual local people and interact in one of their like daily life kind of things. And yes, libraries and the grocery stores. We also love to go to cemeteries because it is very interesting how different cultures honor their dead, and how they handle that. And cemeteries are very different in different geographic and cultural locations. And our kids got to the point when we were living on the sailboat when we would get to a new island and they would have zero interest in going to another perfect sandy crescent beach with turquoise blue water. They were like, do they have a library?
Right. Ready for some
and then
other experiences, right?
Yeah, they'd say like, wait, at the last library we were at, I was able to read this book up to this page, and now I'm going to find that same book at this next library and pick up where I left off, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. The library was a favorite spot. In Sleep, we went twice. They had a children's area, and they got to play, and we got to check out some books and everything. So when we had to like go back the last time and bring the books back, and like we're leaving Spleet, now it was a little bit like, wait, what? It's okay. They'll have libraries in Rieka too. It'll be all right, you know. Um, but yeah.
Interjecting really quickly, you mentioned cemeteries, and if you get the chance, you should visit the Croatian cemeteries because they're. I mean, obviously, like you said, there's a cultural element, understanding how people, treat their dead and honor them. But Croatia is also known for having exceptionally beautiful cemeteries. And the year that I was here as a missionary, one of the years I was here as a missionary, Varaždin, I spent 8 months there, was voted the most beautiful cemetery in Europe. So um, they've just got bushes that are, manicured, and they kind of look like different shapes or whatever. They've got statues in there, and it's just really well kept. And if you can manage to line it up on November 1st for Day of the Dead, then it's an amazing experience.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
You're
I
selling
love the
Croatia on the
smaller-
year-round thing. I like it. The frozen waterfalls,
Yeah.
Day of the Dead,
Not just
summer
the
beaches.
Yeah.
Well, and Jordan, to what you were saying about traveling now while your kids are young, it kind of takes me back to something that Emily and I have talked a lot about called double return parenting, where when you're doing the things that you want, that sort of fill you up as an adult, the things that you don't want to put off until you're 60, 70, beyond, and doing those things now, there's what we call there's a double return. There's a double benefit that your kids are getting these incredible experiences. They're getting all of the things that you've described with interacting with other languages, other kinds of foods, different ways of doing things, and realizing that their way or your way as a family is not the only way that it happens around the world. And then also, you're not putting off till retirement things that are going to enrich you as an individual, as a couple. And so it seems like one of these things that just everybody wins. Everybody is getting something that is helpful and beneficial to them. And circling into the cemeteries, we're all going to die. That's how it ends for all of us. And whether sooner or later. And so doing the things now rather than putting it off for 20 years, because that can feel like a grind. Um, and everyone has their own circumstances and their own situations about when things happen in life. But I love that you're doing this now while you're young, while your kids are young, and everyone's getting the benefit. And every day is a gift. We never know when we're going to die. And that's one reason we like to go to cemeteries, is because it just helps remind us, today is a gift. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, I would say another benefit of it, at least what we saw with our kids, taking them to different places and traveling with them, is that every one of those experiences then stood out as distinct and unique. And we shared all of these same points of reference. I like, oh, remember when we were here? Remember when we were there and we did this together and this funny thing happened? And that can happen really wherever you live. But it can occur that when you do the same things on repeat, that your memories kind of collapse into each other, and they don't, and that makes it kind of, I don't know if this is girl math or whatever, but it makes your life shorter. Whereas when you have memories that hold their own spot distinctly instead of collapsing into each other, it does make your life feel longer, right? Like more full. Like when you come to a brand new place and the first time you're seeing it, you notice all of these different things. Even by the second day, you wouldn't think of taking a picture of something that really caught your attention on the first day, because our brains adapt quickly and we get very familiar. And anyway, we just have seen with our kids that we then had all of these points of reference in memories and experiences that we had shared together that were unique, that really connected us, because like, this is something that we did together that everybody didn't do together, right? That it was unique to our family, and we can go back and and point to those things. And you can get a similar thing by reading aloud, right? Like, oh yeah, we've all been through this same journey, the same story. We love this line, we're referencing it. But I think when you're building a family culture or any kind of relationship, just having so many of those little unique ties are what really makes a difference. And I would say the last thing that was a return on our travel investment as a family was how our kids, as they became adults, were open and curious and bold about taking steps in their life that their friends might think, what, how did that even enter your mind to do that thing or approach the problem in that way? And it's because they've seen that there's lots of different ways to approach a problem. When they went to Finland, people opened a square box of ice cream and they cut it into slices and served it as cubes. You see stuff like that and you're like, there's probably a way, we can, we don't have to always scoop, and just like the littlest things like that just made them really open. They're like, I don't have to wear that brand. I don't have to take this career path. I don't have to, whatever. I'm going to intentionally figure out what works for me. And it might look weird to you, but I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And just the time, the time spent together too, right? I've noticed even just at home, it's easier when I'm at home with my kids to get, okay, there are things at home that need to be done. There are things on my computer that need to be done. It's easy to be in the same room and, kind of be doing our own thing. And of course that's going to be necessity a lot of the time. But when we're out of the house, it's a lot easier, again, in large part because of necessity, to have my full attention, on them and to be doing this together. And then so, compound that by being away for, quite a while and being out a lot of the time in areas that we're not familiar, that we don't know like the back of our hands, and having these experiences together and just being focused on each other, right? We're not doing school right now. We're not doing the extracurriculars. We're not doing the play dates and the extended family get-togethers that we're, of course, excited to do again when we go home. But for the moment, it's just, okay, it's us. And that's pretty much it, all the time. And it's precious to be able to have those experiences, at these stages that we all know, they pass through so quickly. So,
yeah, that's beautiful.
Emily might have some other questions for you, but for me, one of the last ones as we kind of start wrapping up, one of the things that I'm curious about is our podcast is called What Could Go Right. I'm curious, what's something that maybe you were worried about or concerned about prior to arriving in Croatia that has maybe turned out better than you thought, or just went, or something that you weren't worried about, but just wasn't even on your radar, that was an unexpected delight?
Yeah, that'll be our last question.
Okay. All right. That can be the last one.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, especially with the unexpected kind of negative turn with work. But really quickly, I want to, one of the things people started asking me as we got closer, like, okay, are you excited? You nervous? I was like, I'm, mostly excited, but I started trying to think about, and I realized, okay, the one thing I'm nervous about is losing Lincoln in a foreign country. We have 3 kids, and the one, Lincoln's the 4-year-old. He is just the 6-year-old is a little more like, if he ever notices that if he stops for a minute and becomes aware of the world around him, he tends to be a little bit oblivious, but if he becomes aware of the world around him and realizes his grown-ups aren't right there, he kind of freezes and panics, which in some ways is good because it makes it a little harder to lose him, right? Lincoln, on the other hand, is very self-assured, and he will go and do whatever he feels like going and doing. And in the last year or two, there have been a number of scares where he's wandered off at a big 4th of July party, or escaped nursery at church and ended up almost crossing the street by himself, and just, all kinds of scary moments that I wouldn't, wouldn't wish on anyone. And so very gratefully, they all turned out fine. But there was a little part of me that just thought, oh, again, new places, places we aren't as familiar with. A lot of the time it's going to be me and the kids. How are we gonna handle this? And it worked out that, in part just as he was, getting older and becoming a little more aware, and in part because of lots of repeated conversations about, the importance of staying with your grown-ups and all of that. I feel like I've seen him, and his older brother too, grow a little bit in their independence, but also in the way that they, see themselves as part of a family unit where we work together, right? we've had conversations about how like, okay, we want to go and do this thing together, but like there's one of me and there's three of you, and we know that Savannah's a baby. There's not really much she can do here. If we're gonna make this happen, we need to work together, right? And if I've seen them at 6 and 4 step up and be able to say, okay, my job on this road that we're walking down that does not have a sidewalk is to hug this wall and stay in front of mom. Like, that's it. And every time we move a few inches off, mom says, hug the wall, and they go back, but like, that's my job and I'm doing it. And at the end of it, it's like, hey, you know what? We did it. We made it to the beach because you guys did what you were supposed to do. Or, my job right now is to entertain the baby so that she's, happy for a moment while we get gas or while we do, something that we need to get done. And it's been cool to watch them just kind of take ownership of those little tasks that keep us all, safe and somewhat sane as we adventure and explore and have fun together.
Very cool.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Christinah.
Yeah, I guess Christinah was talking about she brought up the fact that right this past month has been quite busy at work, and I think one of the important things that I've tried to keep in mind, just generally in life and on this trip in particular, is just how often we have things that seem negative, problematic at the time, right? That turn out to be a blessing. So, I mean, a couple of things. I've ended up working, like I said, more than I ever have on this trip, and it's been frustrating. There have been a number of times that, Thursday or Friday rolls around and I realize I've literally not left my Airbnb since Sunday night. And you're in this beautiful place. You see all you can see the coastline from where you're staying, and it's like, I could be there and I'm not. But a couple of things I think have come from it. First of all, so I live, or back when we were in Utah, back when we had a home, we lived about a block and a half from my office. And so we ended up with a 2-bedroom apartment. I didn't need an at-home office. I mean, I needed a little tiny place where I could work from home if I needed to. But generally, I just went into the office in the morning and I stayed there until, I was pretty sure I could log off. And this has been the first time in the last 3 years that I've done a lot of work with my kids around, with Christinah around, and I was really nervous about it. And it's been a much better experience than I was expecting it to be. I've spent more time with my kids, even though it's been the busiest period of my career so far. I've actually spent more time with my kids since coming out here, just because they're there, right? They're right downstairs, right outside the door. I think, maybe somewhat perversely, I guess, it's also helped me realize that I really don't want to do this forever. My job, it's helped me see things that are a little bit more important. And, I think I already knew that. I was already kind of going down that line, but you start to realize, my job's amazing, and it's opened up this opportunity to be able to do this in the first place. But then you start to realize, well, if I could find something a little bit better balanced, then maybe I could do this and actually enjoy it, right? Actually get to spend time with my family or whatever. And so I think, and something I kind of just generally wanted to get across here was, you guys keep talking about, it can be kind of scary to do this. It can be, people can hesitate, talking about the rewards. I think it is important to recognize that, at least in our stage, there's sacrifice too, right? Like, it's not an easy thing to pick up your family, move them across the world, 9-hour plane flights with kids. Our kids travel exceptionally well. And even so, right? There are just moments where your kids start screaming on the plane and everyone's looking at you like, really? Why are you here? And then, just the effort, the money that goes into being here, putting up with people from a different culture. Croatians are very blunt. They don't beat around the bush at all. And there have been at least 2 occasions where somebody has told Christinah that she was not parenting well. In both cases, they were people who, as far as we could tell, are not parents themselves. So not a lot of
They're the smartest people
Exactly.
about.
I got it all figured
I
out.
know the most.
They're untainted. Yeah, they're untainted by
But
experience.
just recognizing like it's not an easy thing, and there will be days where you wish that you were back home, where you just hadn't
It's
made the trip
comfortable
or
and,
whatever.
yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, if you're willing to put in the effort, then it always pays off. It always has for me, at least. So
Yeah, I can totally second that. We definitely felt like we made tons of sacrifices and I don't know, a year's worth of 3-minute cold showers and yeah, kind of like where are the light switches and what's the shit and like, hey, everybody stay home and I'm gonna go check out this grocery store so that when we actually come, I'll know my way around, or just our daughter was in college where we did a lot of traveling across Europe with our family. We did like 5 or 6 months and her friends kept saying to her, like, are you jealous? Oh, don't you wish you were with your family right now? Oh, now they're in Finland. Oh, now they're in Greece. Oh, now they're in Venice or wherever, and she was like, no, I'm choosing where I want to be. I could travel if I want to. And I know how draining that lifestyle is. And, she did come out to Portugal with us, but yeah, I think it's a very valid point and well said that it's a trade-off and you want to be intentional and some things will turn out better than you thought. Some things will turn out worse than you thought, but our experience has matched yours where in every case where we've traveled as a family, it has been more than worth it.
Definitely.
So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Oh, just agree. Definitely a net positive.
Yeah, net positive.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for taking time to jump on a call with us, especially with your work schedule and all the adjustment, the things that you're managing with kids and a remote job on an 8-hour time lag.
And friends visiting and yeah, all of the things.
Well, it's been fun to get to pause, especially during the experience still and reflect a little bit and get started to build up some excitement for you guys to get to come out and experience some of these same things. So thank you so much for having the conversation.
Will you'll be there when we get there?
Like we'll still be in Rijeka. You said you're flying into Split, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll still be up here in Rijeka, about 4 hours away, but we will be in the country.
Current plan is
maybe we'll road
maybe you
trip
should. A current plan is to be in Rijeka until the end of the month, and then we'll head out west on August 1st or July 31st or something.
Yeah. We asked our 6-year-old who the trip worked out really well for him. He has been going through a phase of being obsessed with geography. He'll kind of do, he'll have phases like this. For a while, it was bugs, and then it was the human body. Right now, it's geography. It's countries and maps. He can find a country on a map better than I can. We said, okay, well, this will be, kind of cool for him to get to say, okay, this is where we're going, on the map. And so we said, well, while we're here, we'll have a little bit of time at the end that Daddy actually gets to take time off and we can, go somewhere else. If you could pick a country in Europe, like, what do you want to visit? And in true to Ollie's logic, he said France, because France is the most visited country in the world. And so, okay, good point. I guess there's, can't miss France. So we're going to get to road trip across there and, hit some things along the way.
He's decided
we'll be here till
that
then.
we told him the other day that we could go one of two routes. We could go up through Italy, Switzerland, over to France, or we could go up through Austria and Germany and, Luxembourg, Belgium area. And we asked him if he had a preference, and he said, the second one, because then I can say I've been to more countries.
Yep.
There you go.
So
Got to put a notch in whatever your car.
that will definitely be more of the fast travel experience, but we're going to keep enjoying the slow travel experience through the end of the month. So we'll be here.
Yeah, both good for different reasons. Well, this has been delightful. Thank you so much. And we end every episode just asking
What could go right?
Hey guys, it's Erik. Before we wrap up today, I want to go over the sailing update. For those of you that are interested in sailing with us, I want you to know what is available. So we do have a few spots left for 2025, and then we've also got a bunch of trips to announce for 2026. So buckle up. There's a few to run through here. Our Greece trip, which is happening in later July, is sold out. So that one is now no longer available. And our Croatia trip, I think, is also sold out. People have said they're going to send me deposits today as of this recording. So I think that one is sold out. If you're interested, check in with me. Just hit me a DM, send me a DM, or email me at eric@theawesomefactory.nyc, and we can let you know what's available there. However, we do have some cabins available for our October trip, Mexico, La Paz. Beautiful, one of my favorite places to go. You should listen to our podcast episode a couple back where we talk about why it's the most underrated, but most beautiful, one of the most beautiful trips we do. So October 20th through the 25th, we'll be in La Paz, Mexico. Then in November, we've got one spot in our BVI trip for a female spot, November 10th through the 15th. Again, I think that one's going to fill up. There's lots of people looking at that. And December 8th through the 13th, we're in the Bahamas, 1.5 cabins, one full cabin plus a female spot. Again, we've got a few folks interested in that, but at the moment, as of this recording, those are available. So if you want to go sailing with us in 2025, those are your options. And now for 2026, if you need to look further out, here you go. British Virgin Islands, January 5th through the 10th. You'll fly in and out of St. Thomas. We're going to be back again a few weeks later, January 26th through the 31st. So 2 chances to sail in the BVI in January. Hopping over February to March, we're going to go to French Polynesia. It's an amazing place. I haven't been there since 2017, so a number of years. It's a fantastic trip. Not going to lie, it's by far the most expensive trip. It's going to be a one-way from an island called Raiatea out to Bora Bora. So you fly to Tahiti, get a hopper over to Raiatea. We're going to sail over to Bora Bora, and then we fly back from there home. So we're not going to be doing this one again for quite a while. So if you're interested in that, March 8th through the 14th, French Polynesia. We are back in the Bahamas, April 13th through the 18th. This time we're going to go to the Abacos, which is different than where we normally go. So it's going to be a pretty special trip, and I'm excited about that. That wraps up our spring. In the summer, we jump back over to the Med. In June, we're going to be back in Italy, Naples, repeating the trip that we did this year. So fun, so beautiful. June 6th through the 13th. Then in July 11th through the 18th, we will be in Greece. We'll sail in and out of Athens. And then in August 1st through the 8th, we're going to go to Croatia again. So, and then, not spoiler alert, but special bonus feature in September 26th, 2026, we're going to go to Italy for a second time, September 12th through the 19th. It's the shoulder season. All the kids are back in school. Most of the tourists have taken off, but the weather is still gorgeous. So there's 2 chances to go to Italy. BVI in January, French Polynesia in March, Bahamas in April, Italy in June, Greece in July, Croatia in August, and then Italy again in September. So if any of those are of interest to you, email us. I'll give the correct email. hello@theawesomefactory.nyc, theawesomefactory.nyc. And that way, me and the folks that help me out will see that. And we'll get you information, or if you want to ping me on social media, you can DM us and we'll get you details. But if any of those are interest, would love to see if having you aboard is a good fit. So that is the sailing update. Thanks.
Okay, so last question. If somebody you knew was thinking about coming out, what would you say to them, or if you have any advice for them?
I would say it's really cool. We've done a lot of traveling on land, but not so much on water. So I thought it was really cool to see. It's just a whole different perspective to see the land from the water rather than being on the land looking out at the sea. So I really love that. So anyway, it's just a different way to travel, fun experience, definitely a good way to just chill and get away from everything and, I don't know, just relax and have a good time.